The first jhana. The first jhana, in its fundamental aspect, is about the application of effort, the beginnings of phenomena, and the center of attention. You direct your attention to any of the 6 sense doors, and when you do this, you perceive an object of meditation arising where you looked for it. You direct your attention again. There is another impression of something, which you are encouraged to perceive as being the same discrete object if you are trying to develop concentration, or as the ever-changing set of sensations if you are trying to train in insight. During each moment in which you direct your attention, you can perceive something. Thus, effort pays off in the first jhana. You can finally meditate. There are the things you are supposed to be paying attention to. You turn attention to the breath. There is the breath, and you can keep your attention on it. You turn your attention to thoughts. There they are. You turn your attention to the feet. There they are. There is something really nice about our concentration finally being this strong and reliable, and this can cause a sense of happiness and contentment. Though if we are using non-physical objects, such as a visualization, or very abstract objects that are far removed from physical sensations, you might not notice the physical sensations of happiness, well-being, or bliss that can accompany the first jhana if you are focusing on objects other than those qualities. This can be very confusing for some people trying to map progress in the jhanas who yet may be deeply into jhana. For example, if you are focusing entirely on the color white, your attention might be so tuned away from your physical body that bliss and rapture might be absent from your experience, even though you might be solidly in the first jhana. This applies to the later jhanas as well. Regardless of whether you feel anything blissful, it is nice to no longer be mucking about in the early stages of meditation and finally be getting somewhere. The first jhana is not particularly fast, nor is it broadly inclusive, generally. If you are visualizing a red dot, there it is, bright and clear. If you are noting, you note the breath second after second. You can stay with it while attention is focused on it. If you are reciting a mantra, you can stay with it while effort is directed to it. That said, the first jhana tends to be unstable initially, reverting to the pre-jhanic, less stable mode of attention until we get good at it. This is a formal list of its flaws. It requires effort, it can easily revert to pre-jhanic attention modes, and it is relatively narrow, being just about the object of attention, rather than things like the space the object occupies, the background sensations, and the sensations that seem to form the sense of subject. However, it beats the pants off the mode of attention that preceded it. A digression about the jhanas. Various people and schools of practice have widely varying standards for what they consider the first jhana, and the rest of them, and thus different ways of describing and diagnosing it and the others. I realize that high standards can be very useful at times, just as low standards can be useful at times. I remember an interview with a meditation teacher who is known for her natural, deep concentration abilities and high standards for the jhanas. During that very brief and quite tense, for me, interview, she said, "What, insert famous jhana teacher, would consider the 4th jhana, I wouldn't even consider access concentration." I see what she was getting at, but I think that having the attitude that the jhanas are something fundamental about attention that can be taken to wildly different depths of development but still retain their essential jhanic qualities is more helpful than drawing what are ultimately somewhat arbitrary lines and saying, "Oh, this very specific thing is this jhana, and the rest of the concentrated meditative states are not." Said another way, I prefer a more dimensional than categorical classification of jhana. For instance, some would suggest that a certain jhana should last for a certain arbitrary period to be classified as that jhana, or should be developed to a certain, very specific, ultimately arbitrary degree of depth or focus to be classified as that jhana. However, I think this misses the basic point that the jhanas are very large baskets in which we can develop practice in all sorts of wonderful and amazing ways, while retaining the core nature of being some basic jhana. Thinking this way requires the ability to accommodate shades of gray along multiple axes of development, and that sort of agile, nuanced thinking is not something everyone does well, including some deep jhana practitioners and extremely intelligent Dharma scholars. I have spent considerable time in both very light, superficial, relatively short-lived jhanic modes of attention, as well as very deep, rock-steady, long-lasting, and extremely refined jhanic modes of attention using a wide variety of objects. While superficially these experiences couldn't have seemed more different, and descriptions of them would seem dissimilar to the uninitiated, there is much to be said for being able to recognize their shared elements. Doing that helps us to navigate in worlds of experience that otherwise can be significantly more confusing. It also helps us understand others' descriptions of their own experiences. Lastly, it is worth getting good at recognizing the gross and subtle core elements of the quality and depth of attention that characterize the jhanic baskets along a wide range of objects, as this helps us to become more mindful of them, which in turn helps us investigate them and understand their true nature directly for ourselves.